so much for this opportunity. I'm very glad to be presenting my solution that I developed during School of Humanity. So first of all, I just want to give you a quick introduction of who I am. So I'm Larissa Moreira. I'm 18 years old. I'm from Rio de Janeiro City, Brazil. And I've been always in love with recombining subjects to solve global social issues. As someone who is from Rio de Janeiro City, I've started to develop different types of interests on analyzing mainly inequalities and a lot of things related to security, mainly focusing on gender equality and also from vulnerable groups. And it couldn't be different with my project. So first of all, I analyzed different types of numbers of the main problems that Brazil is facing. And I want to ask you, did you know that during the first year of pandemic, 1 in 4 women in Brazil suffered domestic violence? What would sum up 13 million Brazilian women who had been victims of violence? However, this number is not only urgent. However, these numbers seem to be also superficial, mainly because people don't actually know who is suffering violence. I could say that in my group of 5 girls, I couldn't identify one of us or two of us who was suffering violence. And it is not exactly because I don't know my friends, or even I have never met any woman in my life being in Brazil who had suffered any type of violence. The main problem here is that me and other people around Brazil don't know how to identify violence. Because we have this type of violence in our life that is more focused on not only sexual but also physical violence, and in fact we tend to forget or not be aware of emotional violence, psychological violence, spiritual, cultural, verbal, and also financial abuse. And it was when I started the investigation phase of my journey in School of Humanity. Here, I started to develop research and also interviewing people in Brazil to ask them about problems. And the main problem that I started investigating was inequalities in Brazil. However, it led me to find the main causes of inequality in Brazil. And some of the main causes of inequality, beyond being, for example, economical issues, was violence. Because some people started to live in the streets and became homeless people because they were trying to avoid conflicts at home. For example, being an LGBTQI plus community and it was needed to leave their houses, or even suffering domestic violence. And they needed literally to run away from that situation without any support from, for example, government or shelters, because they were full of people and was not able to really support individually those people. And I started to really investigate this problem, because it was not only inequality or even related with just domestic violence. The domestic violence and the inequality were continuing happening because we had some root causes. And some of the root causes I could analyze here. For example, one of them is the lack of community support. Mainly because when a lot of situations that a lot of Brazilian women have reported was that they were in a bus, they started to suffer sexual violence in the bus. And when they asked for help, like, people, please look at this, I'm suffering this type of sexual violence, please someone call the police. And some people tend to not react. People say, like, I don't want to interfere in the situation, I don't want to be involved in this problem. And it not only happens on bus, it happens on streets, it happens at home, with a familiar being constant that there are people in their family suffering domestic violence, and they don't do anything to support directly this person, to stop that situation. And it happens everywhere, in schools, in hospitals, everywhere, because violence is everywhere. Remember what I said, the violence is not only related with physical, with sexual, it is also including psychological, cultural violence, spiritual violence, and other types of violence that even include the workspace. Also, the lack of confidence and safety to report. A lot of people cannot have effectivity of protection. I'm going to tell you a case that happened in Brazil. A girl recorded a video saying like, please, the police station, help me, and really asked the police station to help them. However, they had a lot of bureaucracy and other problems that could to really start protecting that girl. But after a few days, she appeared died, and she said that the man would kill her, and he killed her. So it is a problem because there are a lot of bureaucracy. There are also a lot of types of problems because we have, as I showed you, a huge number of people suffering domestic violence or other types of violence. And the police stations are not really able to control all the situations that happens in daily life. Also, people don't also report because they suffer intimidation by the part of the aggressor. If an aggressor say, if you report, I will kill your son, I will kill your mother, what would you do? Would you really risk the life of your family to report the violence that you are suffering? It is hard to have empathy in these places. However, people tend to blame a lot the victim, what actually is not the correct thing to do. Also, it relates that people don't usually interfere in the situations, and also if you want to take the action, you suffer intimidation, and also the protection actions are not effective. So you see yourself in a place without any type of solution for your life and for saving people around you. And also, as I mentioned in the beginning, the lack of identification of this violence. People are awareness less about the violence types. So you may suffer moral violence in your workspace and you are not aware of it because it is structural. Mainly in Brazil, there are a lot of comments, sexist comments, and even actions that seem to be, oh, it is normal for women. However, it is clearly a type of sexist and also behavior and also a type of violence. And with these thoughts in mind, when I started to really investigate the main problem that I would solve. And the main impacts of this problem are not including just the violence itself. It includes also increase of psychological problems because when you are a woman and born in a sexist society, you already have different types of psychological problems, also not only for women, but also the violence that is suffered by LGBTQI+ communities and other vulnerable groups in Brazil. Also, the increase of social inequality. As I mentioned, one of the main reasons for homelessness in Brazil is the conflicts at home and also domestic violence. So people start to have less opportunities and also to live in precarious situations and positions because they are trying to really get out of that situation that is being nocive for them. And also, as I mentioned, the increase of homelessness. It includes not only the homelessness, but also social inequality in general. As I mentioned, there are a lot of financial abuse where victims do not report any type of violence because they are financially dependent of their partner or any type of familiar parents that they have. So it is one of the huge problems that happens in Brazil. And I started to really analyze all the information during my journey at School of Humanity to really start engaging on different insights and solutions that I could create. But now I want to give you a situation. Imagine that you are in a workspace and you have a friend called Sarah. Sarah have lunch with you every day. You gossip, you have good conversations. She's very extrovert, and you have really fast. It is very easy to understand what she's feeling because she's very communicative and a lot of other aspects that you can see on her. However, suddenly, from one week to other, she started to be very introvert. She started to not tell you everything that she does during a day, or even she started to be more shy what makes you feel, who is that girl? It doesn't seem that girl that I have met before. And what you're going to do is to investigate why your friend is like this. So if you could read her mind, would it be more effective to understand what is happening? Yeah, it probably would be. However, humans are not still able to read others' mind. So what you can do is to really develop some insights and investigate the problem with the information you already have. And what you can do to investigate is to get these unfamiliar behaviors and use this analysis to really find the main problem. And my solution wants to show you that by analyzing unfamiliar behaviors, you can be able to find domestic violence. And here it is my solution. Antivi, it was when I started my prototyping phase, and I started to develop Antivi. Antivi works to help you understand and if people around you are suffering domestic violence. So the main idea of the project is that if your community on the streets or people who you don't know cannot give you the support to report, for example, and you are suffering intimidation to report, what you can do is that friends around you and even people in the school, in your workspace who know you will be able to identify if you're suffering domestic violence if they are not being aware of it. The idea is that Antivi is a platform in Portuguese that facilitates both the identification, report, and prevention of domestic violence of the vulnerable groups in Brazil through the human behavior analysis. And by starting this prototype, I firstly created a website, which will receive also an app version, a phone version as well. And this website works a lot with the articles I have written through a lot of research and also development of games that would engage both adult public and also children on solving this problem. First of all, the first space in my website is the children journey. The children journey is a space for children to identify violence in their lives and report it. So children tend to be more quiet while identifying and also to report violence. So it will help children to report if they are suffering violence at, for example, school, and it will help them to report it to someone who they trust. At the same time, if they are suffering any type of violence in their home, they will be able to identify it and report it to a teacher that they trust, for example. And also, I will teach different types of techniques for children to identify violence in their friends. So do you remember the case of Sarah? It will be exactly the same. The children will analyze if their friend who is very communicative changed, or even if that friend started to talk and use some bad words suddenly, for example, and analyze different types of signs that they can use to identify if their friends are suffering any type of violence. The other space that I've created is more directed for adults. And this space have a couple of articles I have writing to identify violence in different types of paths. So for example, it has analysis techniques that can help you identify possible aggressors, possible victims, if children are suffering any type of violence, and what are the characteristics, physical and emotional characteristics of children who suffer of violence, and also if I am someone who practices violence. A lot of types of violence I practice without people really knowing that they are practicing this. There are some research that probably if you ask someone like, are you aggressive? Probably the person will say, no, I'm not. But this person actually can be someone aggressive who's not aware of it. Because of this, it's very important to understand this type of techniques to apply in your workspace. You now can be someone in your workspace and you don't know that, for example, two employees are being aggressive or making not only bullying, but also moral violence to one of the girls who work in your company, for example. And what you need to do is to use these analysis techniques to really understand what is happening and identifying the problem, or even identifying the problem before the worst happened. Identify some weird behaviors that can lead to death and really physical violence even. And also we have a space to combat violence for children and also for workspace that use education studies and games that helps people to detect violence and promote practice against violent behaviors. So we're going to teach employees how to control their emotional intelligence. And also we're going to make some games that can help people to detect violence. So if you see, for example, someone who always never talk about their I don't know, their wife, or never talk about their husband, it is weird because sometimes when we talk about our family, it's because we create a care for it. So in some way, we really need to really understand what is happening in different perspectives. So it was my solution, and my main plan for the future is to make this not only an online platform, but make this a training in person, visiting schools, mainly schools in the poorest neighborhoods and underdeveloped neighborhoods and zones in Rio de Janeiro city, and also aware companies to capacitate people and aware children. Imagine in a world that teachers are capacitated after graduating from a university or even before start teaching and leading with people, if they are literally taught how to understand how violence happens in children and also in their co-workers. I will give you an example that happened a type of lecture in a school talking about violence types. And it was even a new, it surprised all the school because after the lecture, some girls reported that they were suffering violence. And it was about children with like 10 years old, 6 years old. So like they were really, really young. And it is a proof that since our early childhood, you can be able to really identify violence. But people should be prepared for this. And not only talk about violence when it appears on TV or in the social media with really cases that scares a whole community. But also be taught in schools and companies and family and our houses how to deal with violence. And I want to talk a little bit about the mindsets that I've developed during developing my solution. First of all, root cause analysis. Secondly, design innovative thinking. It was very important to leave this cliche of trying to solve violence, trying to arrest aggressors. It is very important. However, violence exists in Brazil for more than 100 years, and doing the same practice was not totally effective in solving this problem. So it required me to really find different other ways to solve this problem. Also, I developed the website without being aware of coding tools and really how to start coding. So I needed to learn no coding tools and the website development. Also, I needed to think while developing the children journey, mainly the children journey, about the UX design, the design of user experience. Understand that children will be not attracted if I don't put an animated character, if I don't really relate this this journey of learning with something they are familiar with, which is a more cute character accompanying them and saying like, hey, come with me this journey and let's learn. Also, I developed problem solving and growth mindset since it was not easy to really find this a good solution that would really support people in my country and mainly on my city. I developed prototyping since my solution haven't been applied yet in schools and companies. I call my solution of a prototype, which has already all the websites developed. You can access now if you want to. However, I feel that my solution is still a prototype because I still need to develop some feedbacks and also apply it at school. And also I developed learning about human behavior studies since I've talked with a lot of psychologists and people who gave me feedback about my solution, and I learned a lot in the process of producing different articles and instructions for people. So I just want to say thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you so much for this moment to talk about problems in Brazil. It is very meaningful for me. It is something that I deal with every day in my daily life. So talking about this and talking about my journey at School of Humanity, developing a solution for this problem means a lot to me, and I really hope you enjoy it. You can contact me, we can connect, you can access the website, connect with me if you have any questions. So thank you so much.
Amazing, Larissa, thank you so much.